makeup. Light and shadow, check. Okay, I think I am losing a little bit of weight around there. I've got to work on it a little bit. Yeah. Anyway. It's a whiteboard for the just to do a diagram. Common DB25 multi switching box, commonly be used for on a computer. This is parallel wiring, so it's not anything complicated. So if it's easy wiring, so it's paralleled, meaning pin 1 goes to pin 1 and pin 2 to pin 2. It's nothing too complicated. So it's still same principles. If you wire anything up with like positive, negative, and a ground to specific pins to what specific things are being used, etc. This will be not really coordinating with the pinning on this. This will be going on the output of the, more or less, the outputs from the Denon, which is height 1, height 2, height 3. Looking for your igloo. Okay, so I got A, B, C, D inputs. Got an output. Got a simple switcher. It's kind of, they say it's shielded, you know. Raise the shields. Okay. So I just got a diagram. I'll do it because it will be kind of, oops, ow. Kind of simple. So let's see. So I've got a switcher box. I've got an output. I'll just use one input, for example. Actually, I'll use two because I've got to use two inputs. Okay. So I take the the outputs from the RCA phonos. You know, so I've just got to do some wire cutting and then connect them to a Phoenix connector, which is connected to a DB25. It's solderless, so no soldering involved. Just attach wires and then tighten down the tension of the screw. It works marvellous. Performs very, very well. So, let's say that's the Dolby Atmos. At mouse, and I'll do a little illustration of a mouse, a little tail. Yeah, so it's a Dolby Atmos. It's funny how some Americans pronounce it. First they say Atmos. Oh, Atmos. Look, just like say forget like moss, like moss on a stone, rolling stone, and just at. But sometimes, you know, I think because I speak fast, and sometimes it comes out the tone, and it's like, I think, what did they say? An mouse, little squeaky little mouse. Put a double D up there. Does anyone know what the double D means? You know, the double D. You know, the double D symbol. Does anyone know what that means? Okay. It's simple. You might think it's Dolby, but the double D. Anyway, So we'll have the signal coming out from height 1, height 2, height 3, going into an input, and then that output then will go back to the amplifier, back to the speakers, and I've got like 9 of them. So there's one over there, one over there. So I've got no center phantom here. I've got true pinpoint sound. You don't get that on a Trinnov, I can tell you that. Poor Trinnov. I mean, it really gets a little bit of a flame grilling, that a bit, you know. Anyway, so it goes into the, you know, and right, regular Dolby Stereo, Dolby Digital, etc. Because I want to recreate what hasn't been done. Oh gosh, probably since late of 1998. No, I think at the very least, I think 99 they must have done it. They refurbished probably late of 1999, probably late of 1999. They probably refurbished the auditoriums that was it still UCI, operated by UCI Cinemas then? I think it was still yet operated by UCI Cinemas, CIC, Cinema Entertainment Corporation, United Cinema International. And the auditoriums used that experimental overhead surround. Not a lot of the public know this. Not a lot of the public probably remember. Not a lot of anyone worldwide, because everyone's been brainwashed by Dolby Atmos, Aura 3D, DDX. They've all been brainwashed like the masses of sheep, and no one's the wiser. But the thing is, with experimental overhead surround, it was never publicized. It was never sort of forced down the public's, you know, the thing that the overhead surrounds were just there. And if a speaker's overhead, then it's overhead. Might be matrix surround, mono matrix surround going in, a little bit complicated than that. But anyway, and that was all run off a Dolby CP50 with an Adobe SRA5, which was spectral recording A, and 5 is just some sort of, I don't know, but it was generally an SR decoder as well. So if you got an SR soundtrack, say like to Total Recall or Robocop, or if it just happened to be The Fugitive and they didn't have digital, then they would just use the SR on it, because the A-type was replaced, but A-type cards were still in the processor. You could take the cards out and then put SR cards in, you know, but it was, you know, if you got to do that between film shows, and it's a bit awkward. So they make a separate module, so, and then it connects and wires to, and all you have to do is press a thing called a format. Format 4 is A-type, Format 5 is Dolby SR, Format 10 is Dolby Digital, Format 1 is mono, Format 2 is just, I think it's stereo, and then you got Format 60, 60, 61, 62, they're just non-sync, just for music, CD, whatever. Then you got other formats as well on the other processors. So I'll take the other. So this might be like the Dolby, I don't know, CP200. Actually, it's a little bit bigger than that. Put a little fader there on there. Put it pointed at 7. As well as I'll be able to use it on the Denon as well. Okay, so I'd have another output that will be coming from, I think this is where this is going to get a little bit complicated. Not too complicated, but with the switching, because it's multi. So I think I've got to put another thing in there. This is 10 minutes in the video anyway. I think I'll just, yeah. So I'll have one there for the Atmos, and I'll maybe say have it on channel A, and then channel B could be for the regular surround channel, and that would only be just a couple of wires. There'll be about, for the overheads, the wiring which has to go to the decoders in the kitchen, the other decoders. So it's only 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. There's only 9 wires I need to connect, which are left to right, left to right, left to right, positive and ground, or positive negative. So there's only a few wires to connect. And then the output from the regular surround output on the Denon, and then the other surround output, which would be, I think this have to be going on the, the system output. So if I wire it onto system output, yeah, rather than doing it on each cinema processor, because that just make a mess of everything and make it even more confusing. So it'd be only on the system, because not auxiliary 1 is the 8500 Denon. Auxiliary number 2 is the CP750 or the CP200 or the DTS. So that's on the other switcher box. So I think this would have to go onto the system output for the surround. So the surround output, regardless, because it's just a single system output and all I'm doing is switching auxiliary modes. So it'll have to go on the system output of the surround. Okay, got it. So that'll connect into channel B on the switcher box, yeah. That connects into the switcher box. And all I have to do then, if I want to recreate, because it'll be all wired up and manageable to play, whether it be mono matrix overhead surround, split stereo surround, split surround, or stereo surround, on the surrounds, because they go through several configurations of mono, going from you can still get original movies, have the discrete mono surround, which sounds pretty phenomenal. Okay, so yeah, it will connect into that, and then the output will still come on the output, and then go to the only thing there is just pause for a sec. Yeah, just resume, because I had to go over it a little bit. It's pretty complicated. I'd still have to switch the other SA10s in the kitchen and put them into conventional operating mode. Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. But there's one thing, I don't know if they were doing anything kind of additional with I think it was Odeon screen number 1, because the way I heard the sound in the auditorium, I'll know when I get this up and running, and I could probably get it up and running. I could get it up and running today. I've got the cable now. I've got the connectors. How many connectors have I got? Oh yeah, I need to get a third connector because yeah, Amazon botched up my bloody delivery, didn't they? So I have to get another DB25 Phoenix connector. So I can only do one thing at the moment. So I have to get another Phoenix connector thing. But I could start making the lead and get it connected and then get it going in through the switcher box, so then I know it works, that you know the switch, of course it will work. Nothing possibly go wrong. So I probably won't, so I'll put an order in for that, and that probably won't get that for a few days or so. But there was something about, let's go to it, I'll show you. I'm not sure if that shows up clear there. Oh yeah, it does. But zoom in. Can I zoom? If I can zoom. No, I can't because I should have had the camera turned around the other way. Anyway, so the auditorium, the ceiling, kind of circular. The cinerama screen over here is not any cinerama anymore because the curtains, tabs, still had tabs there. I don't think they used the tabs when they put in the new screen, and they slightly brought it forward away from where the original screen was. I'm not sure if it were the original, because the cinerama screen would have gone a little bit more curved. The curtains would have pulled in a little bit more, would have gone in a little bit more, so the screen's even very deeper curved. Anyway, still had a curve, but the overhead surrounds for the cinerama 1969. There's one up here, one back here, and then one up here, and then one over here. This is zoomed in, the image is a bit zoomed in, so it's a bit pixely. And one here, and then the other one's up here because it's not in focus on the camera. But how it's, and the JBL 8330 Mark 1 surrounds going around the auditorium up here, around here. Bit weird over here near where the projection is, and they're slightly forward where the seating's going to go back a little bit. It's going to sound awful in that position. And a couple of more up here in the corners where you can't see. One over here, I think, in the corner. And I think one up here in the corner there was. But if it was me, I wouldn't have put those surrounds in those positions. That's the worst place, because any audience that's underneath this overhang, they're not going to hear the damn thing. You would, theoretically, but it wouldn't work the way it does, so to speak. It would be kind of in front of you, and it would sound rubbish. And every time I had to sit in this auditorium, I had to sit a little bit more forward. I've never really sat in the middle anymore. Used to, and there's not much difference between. There's only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Not really 8 rows. If there was, it'd probably be more like 9 rows, because you've got the aisle going down the middle here, so it'd be more like 9 seat rows back to here, which is roughly there, is about up. I think this overhead here would have been slightly back a little bit, and this obviously a little bit forward, so it had a good kind of diffused surround. The idea is the higher the speaker is placed, the sound becomes a little bit more diffused. Whereas you get the speaker a little bit more closer to you and it's playing pink noise, and then you think it sounds like a speaker, because you got it there and move over there, and it doesn't diffuse or immerse pink noise, because now you're hearing it on this side, and you move it directly above it, underneath it, and then it is diffused. You move that way, this way, but then you raise it up higher and then move this way, that way, and you think, it's getting a bit more diffused. bit more higher up, and I think, yeah, it's covering a little bit more angle, side to side. Well, not really side to side, kind of, or kind of like, you know, circly. You know, and then you put another up there and another and another, and then it gets more uniform with the, you know. That's the technique. And I think the original overhead surround in that auditorium was, in my opinion, it was way better than the 1999 JBL install. Not that there was anything wrong with JBL, it was just the way the surround speakers were located, or the speakers for the surround were located. It was dreadful. It worked, but it just seemed very odd. I would have put those speakers more lined on the back wall, but then the problem there being the back row seating was so close to the wall, literally. So you would have to remove at least 2 rows of seats, so you got a bit of a gap. Otherwise, too close to it, it sounds like on top of a speaker, you know. The same speaker and the same ones, only mine are Mark II versions and those are Mark 1s. In fact, those Mark 1s were used in the Empire Leicester Square or High Wycombe. Mark II versions came around a little bit, I think maybe early 90s. So my back row's only got a bit of a gap between the you know, this seating thing. I could, you know, move it forward, literally with a bit of help maybe, and put some rope around the end, the seat thing down here. Put some rope, tie some rope there, and over that side, and then pull, and then this seating will slide. You know, because it's only a, what's it? And it will slide gradually, and then you'll be able to kind of push it back, sort of thing, with a bit of, oh, maybe 10,000. Anyway, you could push it. It's movable. It's awkward, but it's movable. But it's very unusual, you know. You got an auditor. I'm not sure how the original overhead would have sounded if you sat too far back in the auditorium. I don't know, but it was very kind of, I think, very kind of controversial with how it kind of it sounded with, say something like Star Wars. But then I wasn't a listener then. I only heard it. I become a listener during the mid-80s, and then I got an interest in it, an obsession. No, just a curiosity. So, hearing or listening to other movies like The Abyss, the first 8 minutes, and then the submarine going down, and then Launch the Boy, you know, and Escape Boy, so it fires away from the submarine, names for the surface, so it could send out a distress signal. That was pretty cool sounding. The way the submarine was plummeting down, and then this boy coming, and then coming near while the beacon's flashing on it, and it kind of going an overhead sort of thing, but it kind of made a sound that, well, sounded like, made me do this. Wow, that was cool. Wow. And another, you know, so I'm not sure if they was using anything additional connected on. Someone showed me around in the projection room there years ago, and I saw the Dolby CP50 processor amplifiers that were rack mounted. They were vertical. I think they were possibly 40 or 50 watt amplifiers. They were didn't need a lot of power for the speakers really, because they're high efficiency. But can't say if I saw anything else in the rack, anything additional, that, because the way that kind of made me go like that. And also the other movie, the sequel, help me, go away, The Fly 2. Oh, that made me tickle. Where they're doing the telepod, and it I'm thinking, oh, that was kind of, there's got to be something else going on there. So the way I see it is there's 6 speakers overhead. I've done another diagram. So I've done an experiment a few years ago where I connected a matrix decoder onto the center channel and connected it onto the rear surround, or mono surround, that is, not mono matrix. So I can actually make an overhead sound. So when a sound pans from the center, it will go from up front and then over and then back onto the surround at the back. It wasn't perfect. It worked. That's one thing. And the other thing I've been thinking about just the last week or so, I think maybe if I would have put 2 more matrix decoders, connect them onto front, left and right, connected to the surround, to the surround channel output, and connect them, because theoretically the signal, if any sound is kind of shifting away from the left or the right, it may, when it's panning or moving towards the surround channel sort of thing, it might make a sort of, but it would be, not sure how much crosstalk it's going to get, because usually there's a 180 degree out of phase to cancellate the signal, so you don't notice it. Sounds like a discrete channel, but if you listen really hard and you think, but sometimes even if you listen really hard on discrete mixes, to certain channels, and listen, you think, sounds discrete, or is it a bit of crosstalk? I don't know. Anyway, so I could have a little bit of that. Anyway, there's always crosstalk, regardless. Get a real object in the room, throw it over there, or something, it makes a sound, you hear it there, it reflects, and then you hear a bit of crosstalk maybe on this side. So it's not like you're hearing it discrete, but it is. That's how it is. So I don't think I'll be able to try the other technique out. I would like to try the other technique, but it would get very complicated. And then run tests, to see if that's. But I would know when I've got it connected up as it is, and run tests of, say, I could actually mimic, if I want to, I could actually mimic that auditorium, because I've got an overhead there and there and there. It's like 1, 2, 3, and then deactivate or switch off the middle ones, and then use the ones at the back, 1, 2 and 3. I can mimic that sort of configuration, or mimic the UCI tower part. That would be, I think that would be screen number 6. I think that would be screen number 6, because the exit door there is too close to the projection. And I know the height of I know what the height is in there. I was projectionist there, not 89, 99. So the overhead surrounds, experimental electro voice, Electro Voice there. I'm not sure what model. Someone I posted a picture and they had an idea. They thought they know what the model number was. I think they were THX approved as well. Projection, slide projector over here, Victoria 35mm projector up there. I could just about see where the Dolby CP50 is, or rack mounted onto the wall, and back about here, can't see it, I think about that position there, that's where the cake platter would be. And then you go down a long corridor behind that, and it goes down into the screen number 5, which was head office. Screens 5 and 6 were the main screens, the main large screens. Need to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 overhead surround. 8 overhead surround. Wow. Wow. Most Trinovs couldn't even do that today. Yeah, Trinov couldn't even duplicate this sort of thing, because you've got to do a special wiring modification. So you can't just do it out of the box. You couldn't even program the bloody thing, because it's I don't think you can. I've read the manual over and over and over, and it's like, pfft, bloody useless. Bin it. But it's useless. This technique that I'm sharing is totally useless to most other people. You can try it if you want to, but you're going to think, nah, because you'll be a little bit like myself, cynical. But to me, it's not personal. It's like I want to recreate that, because seeing, say, like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which have been in one of the other small auditoriums. These are the smaller auditoriums, screens from 1 to 4 and 7 to 10, and they were all the same design. And this wasn't the only UCI with the overhead surround experimental. There was a few others. I'm not sure how many other auditoriums. But I think there was one over at Solent or somewhere. I've seen a video. It's not very clear, but I can just vaguely, in some of the video, I can just vaguely see the overhead surrounds in the auditorium while it's projecting a movie called House Sitter. And listening even to the video, you know, the sound of the acoustic, the time, it almost sounded similar to how I remember how it was in at Tower Park, because it had a nice acoustical. It didn't have too much echo. That was, you know, that muddles up not just dialogue. It's going to muddle up sound effects or even music. It's just going to emphasize it a little bit more. You don't need it. But this smaller screen, they only had seven overhead surround. So 1, 2, 3 here, and over this side 1, 2. And then a bit up here, because you've got projection here, and then this is 2 projection box. So you walk over to this behind the wall, and then you're on to the next auditorium, project for the next auditorium in the same booth, in the same box. You walk up a couple of stairs, and then you know, cake platter would be here. I can see the rack, sound rack, projector, and the slide projector. But the overhead in the small auditorium, it worked good. The only difference was the screen, and because it wasn't, it was more typically like my room or anyone else's, this sort of typical sort of thing. Whereas in the larger auditoriums, the screen was more in the middle, and you had quite a bit of space between the side walls. Thus, you get a little bit nice. You get a nice, good stereo effect with LCR, and of course more seating in the auditorium. Today they're totally different. They totally butchered it, and they totally messed it up today. Whereas the larger auditoriums are got a wooden floor on the floor, where it's concrete. and all that doesn't exist anymore. They got raised seating, which is actually comfortable than the original, to be frank. It's rocker seats. Rocker seats, if I remember. I think they have rocker seats. They're just standard. But, you know, someone had the bright idea of putting the wood material that's on the floor and then putting it so tight, close to the wall, rather than putting a bit of a gap. And now, because you get they changed all the sound spec and everything, and you get not just audible, you hear it slightly audibly, you can feel it as well, because then the wall is acting like a diaphragm, and then it's only going to happen at certain low frequencies. That's going to cause a wave effect, and then you can feel it going through the floor, and it's so not just audible, but you can feel it, and it's totally distracting. Like on here, this bloody movie Avengers, a bloody Marvel movie, and the other screen number 5 while I'm in screen number 6, watching Titanic 3D, threw the glasses away, and all I can hear was the Avengers for about 2.5 hours. So, but the sound was slightly improved, because whereas before it was less, quite a little bit less, and actually the auditoriums were only more or less designed for about a 90 dB peak. And then when you start going over that spec, the percentage leakage gets a little bit more between the adjacent screen or the wall. If the walls were a bit thicker or a little bit more divided, then you wouldn't notice it, and isolated and so, you wouldn't notice it then. So that's that. Yeah, overhead surrounds. Been around for... The only difference with it today is that it's done discrete. That's the only difference. To me, it's not a new thing. It's nothing new there. And some of the bad, awful, dreadful, just to cash in on Dolby Atmos, because Atmos is now leading. Dolby Labs is leading. They're up there now. Aura 3D is kaput. It's gone. It's history. It probably won't ever come back. Probably won't. You know, and even if it does, it won't pick up again, because they're not going to put. If they ain't going to put content out there then it won't. It can just frizzle, and that's it. DTS X, I think that'd be the next one that will phase out. It doesn't have a chance. So, you know, it's not like, say, you know, they tried, but frankly, I think they tried very poorly, because they're trying to call it 3D audio, XYZ, and all that, and bloody sound for the sound overheads. You know, only typically go from the sidewall up to the ceiling and back down, or from the screen channel from there and then up and then back down. It's only doing it half of it. It's not doing it fully, where it's down floor level, like, you know, create, like if you're on Water World and create, depending on how the camera is, and you can create this water effect that sounds below you, yeah. And if you would go underwater, you would still have a waterish sound below, as well as on the side surrounds and the overhead, to create some sort of have to be low frequency. You can't have too much liquidy top end sounds, because you just don't hear that underwater. It's very muffled. But to do that successfully it's not difficult. It just takes quite a lot of decoding. You need more channels, because it's very complex to create that. Otherwise, you might as well do it in a small room as an experimental sort of thing. But will it go public? Will it be probably not too much? It'll probably only go in theme parks or something, you know. and it probably won't make cinemas. But cinemas are only just looking for another way to get audience in, you know. Has been, it's always been, you know, when mono or silent movie, and then going into Vidaphone sound, and then drawing more audiences in, and then going into optical soundtrack, and then that being a little bit more easier than Vidaphone, and then gradually going into magnetic sound, and then into digital sound, and then pretty much now there's nowhere else left to go with it. So that's how it's transpired through that, and then of course channel output encode and channel encode and output channeling, you know, from mono, stereo, 4-channel, 6 or 8, and now I don't know what they say, it was 125 channel. I think my CB radio can still do more channels than that, 360. Atmos hasn't got anything on my CB radio. But I think they're just wasting their bloody time. They're just putting in extra surround speakers when they could have been putting in below surround and making it, that's it. Because once that's done, after that, there's nowhere else left you can go with all this. That's it. It's done. The only extra way you can go with it is you got to make below surround totally and utterly uniform. Otherwise, you know, it's got to be literally. It's a very complicated sort of process, and it will be probably more expensive than putting overhead surrounds, because, like I say, the higher they're up, you get more uniform. But are they that good? To a trained listener like myself, I will spot flaws in it like that. You only have to listen to pink noise. When you got a soundtrack playing, you got sound coming from the front, the sides, back, occasionally, sometimes overhead. And when it is, it's like, and that was that for the entire 3 hour of the movie. And you think, what the blazers was that point with that? Pathetic. You don't even hear that in the real world, depending on where you are situated in the real world. I can explain quite a little bit more, and maybe in another video, to educate, because quite a lot of people are too wrapped up in bloody movies and probably not even thinking of real world, because Atmos and all this free is trying to say, like, we're trying to mimic real world, and so far thus I have not really heard much that even comes near. They can't even get rain sound effects bloody correct, for crying out loud. When you hear like rain, bullshit, it doesn't sound overhead. What you hear outdoors when it makes that sound is the rain landing on the ground. Rain, as it's falling, it's silent. It's virtually silent. It's free falling through air. It doesn't make sound when it's coming through the air. Hailstones, you don't even hear them. You hear them when they hit the objects that they're landing on, in the multitude of objects everywhere. You got to create something like that in a cinema environment, home cinema, a dubbing stage, Dolby Labs, you know, whatever. You got to have literally, but that's probably where you got to have to say, we got to draw the line here. This is too much, because it would just cost it'd be too damn expensive, and maintenance, and you have to accept at the end of the day that real life sound just knocks out all this, blows it out of the water. Even hearing a few subtle sounds outside for just a couple of seconds completely blows a 3 hour Avatar movie completely out the water.